Kevin Bennett stood in the courthouse hallway so close I could smell the expensive cologne he saved for days of power. He said, "Today is the best day of my life. I am taking everything from you." His smile looked like the ending had already been approved. Behind him waited Sophie Lane, quiet and confident, her silence sharp as glass. People moved by with files and worries while our small private war unfolded in the narrow space. I stayed calm, hands folded, eyes steady, because fear would only feed him. He talked about sharks for lawyers and said quiet women always lose. My lawyer, Harold Whitman, arrived without hurry and asked if I had brought everything we discussed. I said yes. He nodded once and told Kevin to be ready because this day would teach him. Kevin laughed, certain the lesson was mine. For years, that belief came from the way he saw me. I kept books, paid bills, tracked deadlines, and made problems disappear while working from home with small business clients. Kevin liked telling people I did simple accounting, nothing important. He enjoyed being the provider, and I let the joke pass. Quiet people notice what others ignore, and numbers rarely lie. I began to see the late nights, the rising expenses, the missing affection, and I waited for the pattern to speak. The day it all changed was rainy and slow. I picked up one of his jackets to take to the cleaner and checked the pockets the way I always did. Deep inside, I found a folded receipt from a luxury jewelry store for $5,000, but during hours he had claimed were filled with meetings. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the date and the time. My heart did not race. I opened social media and in minutes found a post from Sophie showing a gold bracelet and a glass of champagne. The caption said, "Best night of my life." I no longer needed explanations. Something inside me went still. The marriage was finished, but the accounting had only begun. That night, I did not wake him. I opened my laptop because emotions create noise and numbers create clarity. I built a new file named Balance only for my eyes. I downloaded statements from every card and account, and the lines began to form a map. Dinners, hotels, flights, gifts, all moving in one direction. Money meant for our future was funding another life. I kept working long after the apartment went quiet. A new version of me was taking shape in the glow of the screen, and she did not raise her voice. She gathered proof. By morning, I knew the path ahead would not be loud. It would be patient. It would move step by step toward the place where truth stands and waits for its moment in the light. That realization felt like the first door opening after years of silence, holding me still at last again. Over the next weeks, I lived in two worlds inside the same home. One world was the everyday face of dinner dishes, quiet questions, soft smiles. The other world began when Kevin left for work and the rooms turned still. I carried the laptop into the storage room and made it my hidden office. I printed statements, spread them across the table, and followed every dollar like a trail through tall grass. I traced my inheritance from the bank to his account, and from there into the down payment for the condo. I traced each monthly transfer I sent, so he could pretend to press the final button himself. The pattern grew clearer with every page. Flights, hotels, gifts, rides, meals, all lining up beside the dates he claimed to be traveling for business. Then the gambling appeared, heavy withdrawals rising after each bonus, like wind over dry fields. By midnight, I felt less like a wife and more like an auditor who had waited years to open the book. Numbers do not flatter and they do not lie. They gave back my steadiness and replaced fear with proof. I understood that silence had become my strongest ally, and I began looking for the right guide. I met Harold Whitman in a small office filled with shelves and patient light. I set the folder before him and explained each sheet the way I would explain a ledger. He listened quietly and read page after page, turning them slowly as if he were weighing truth in his hands. When he finished, he said, "We will move carefully and let Kevin believe he is winning. We will let him talk and then lay the records before the judge at the right moment." The plan felt like air after months of heavy pressure. The calendar moved forward, and Kevin kept boasting that everything would soon belong to him. I listened and nodded and kept serving dinner while the quiet plan sharpened in the background. On the night before court, I sorted the folder again and again until every section looked like a clear map. I slept lightly, but without fear. Morning arrived, and I dressed simply, met Harold at the steps, and walked with him into the courthouse. Kevin entered with the stride of someone expecting applause. Sophie waited in the hallway, carrying the smile of a future she thought was guaranteed. I sat at our table, folded my hands, and let the quiet anchor me. Because truth can travel slowly, yet it always reaches the place where the final balance must be read. And as I breathed, I felt the strength of patience gathering for the moment ahead, when the court would hear not guesses or noise, but the story written by every careful number and every silent night of work that had brought me here to speak without raising my voice and still be heard at last. When the door opened and the day finally began to shift toward truth itself. Inside the courtroom, Kevin sat tall as his lawyer began to speak about success and sacrifice. He painted me as someone who stayed home while Kevin carried the weight of our life. The judge listened without reaction. I kept my eyes on the folder because I knew what waited there. When Harold finally stood, the room shifted. He said, "This case is about records and nothing else." He placed the first set of papers on the table, showing how my inheritance flowed into Kevin's account and straight to the developer for the condo. Then he showed every mortgage payment leaving my account before Kevin clicked the final button. Kevin shifted in his chair. His lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. Harold continued. One piece at a time. Flights, hotels, dinners, all tied to the same dates and the same name, Sophie Lane. The silence in the courtroom grew heavy. I could feel Kevin losing the ground beneath him. Harold then revealed the gambling transfers, huge withdrawals moving to betting sites, each time a bonus landed. He called it dissipation of marital assets and handed the judge a thick stack of statements. My heart stayed steady because the numbers were speaking more clearly than I ever could. He showed deposits that never appeared on tax forms and income routed through third-party channels. He said, "We are not asking for criminal charges, only for the truth about what this marriage contained." The judge leaned forward, reading line after line. Her expression changed from neutral to cold. Kevin opened his mouth, but the judge stopped him. Harold lifted a copy of the jewelry receipt, $5,000 on a weekday, and set beside it a printed image of Sophie wearing the bracelet while celebrating online. Kevin sagged in his chair. His lawyer shuffled papers, searching for something that did not exist. Harold let the silence stretch, because silence can be louder than any argument. The judge finally said, "We will take a brief recess so I can review the record fully." Everyone stood. The room emptied into the hallway. Kevin walked toward me with a face I had never seen before and whispered, "What did you do?" I said, "I did the accounting." Harold closed the folder, and we waited quietly, because patience was still part of the plan, and the truth had already entered the room ahead of us. While we waited, I remembered the nights alone in the storage room, the copies, the tabs, the careful notes. All of it had led to this quiet corridor where the future was tilting. The judge returned and called us back inside. Her voice carried the weight of decisions waiting to be spoken. I sat down again, folded my hands, and felt calm settle around me like armor made of light and work and time. I trusted the process, trusted Harold, trusted the quiet math that had guided every step forward toward justice, and knew the truth would hold. The judge returned, and everyone sat as the room grew still. She looked at the papers and then at Kevin and said, "The evidence speaks for itself. The condo is recognized as my separate property, and it will not be divided." Kevin lowered his head. The court finds that marital assets were wasted through gambling and gifts and orders reimbursement for half of the proven losses. The vehicle purchased during the marriage will remain with Kevin along with the loan obligation. His lawyer stayed silent because there was nothing left to challenge. Each sentence narrowed his future while my breathing grew lighter. When the gavel fell, the silence felt final. We stepped into the hallway and Sophie rushed forward, asking if we had won. Kevin could not answer, and she turned away like someone waking from a dream. She walked out without looking back. Moments later, his phone rang, and his company informed him that an internal review had begun based on the records revealed in court. By the time he reached the steps, his job was suspended and the investigation widening. I passed him without stopping, because some endings need no words. Outside, the air felt open instead of heavy. Harold shook my hand and said patience carried the case and that I had allowed the truth to work. I thanked him and went home. The condo waited quiet and steady, and now it belonged to me. I changed locks, reset accounts, and began rebuilding routines that were mine alone. Work returned in calm, steady waves. Clients valued precision and trust. The storage room that once held my secret office became a small, bright space, but I kept the desk as a reminder of clarity. Kevin wanted freedom without responsibility, and now he had it with no home and no applause. I wanted fairness, and I earned it. Nights grew peaceful, and mornings simple, with coffee and light through the window. I walked more, I read more, I planned carefully without fear. Friends asked how I managed, and I said, quiet is not weakness, it is focus. Sometimes strangers wrote to say the story helped them stay patient, and I answered when I could, because I remembered what it felt like to wait while truth gathered strength. I did not become bitter, and I did not chase revenge. I chose preparation and let the balance close in its own time. One afternoon, I stood in the living room and realized I was no longer replaying the past. I was thinking about tomorrow, and that was the real victory. Not the paperwork or the property, but the peace that came from refusing to surrender the truth. The future felt open again, and I walked into it, calm, steady, grateful, knowing that quiet strength had carried me all the way to justice, and the lesson stayed with me, that patience gathers power, and that silence, when guided by truth, becomes a voice stronger than fear and louder than any lie, forever.
If this story touched you, remember that quiet strength still wins, and truth always finds its way back home. Take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope. And if you want more real stories about courage, patience, and justice, stay with us. Like the post, subscribe for the next chapter, and let us know you are here, because your support helps these voices keep going and reminds others that they are not alone.